What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Taryn, this is MTGO Traders, and let's go over blue-white control for Dominaria Standard. So we finally got my actual setup where I can actually stand again, so that's awesome. But today we're going over blue-white control, which is a really fun deck that I really liked putting together. This is a control deck, so if you don't like control, get out of here. This is a deck that's going to be noping your opponent forever until you cast cards like Teferi, or Approach the Second Sun and win that way. There have been control decks in the past in Standard right now, and we actually did have a blue-white control deck for Approach to the Second Sun, but I do think now that Teferi is in the deck, there's just enough pieces to make this deck truly threatening and truly like maybe tier 1 even. So let's come along with me. Let's go into the deck list here. Starting off, of course, with our new layout and our creatures and planeswalkers. We only have 2 in the main board and 3 planeswalkers in the actual main board here too. Torrential Gearhulk, if you guys don't know by now, Torrential Gearhulk is a marquee card for a control deck. 6 mana, 5/6 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can choose a target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, or a target instant card from your graveyard, not sorcery, just instant, guys, without paying its mana cost, and you can cast that card. And of course, when you cast it, it puts it into exile. So really good card, being able to hopefully cast and maybe counter a spell or an opponent's trying to cast. So if they try to cast a big bomb, we just go Torrential Gearhulk, dissolve that, or Torrential Gearhulk, just counter it outright, and have a 5/6 on the battlefield, which is really nice. Next up, beside that though, we have our new card, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, a 5 mana, 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker Teferi. We can +1 draw a card, and at the beginning of our next instant, untap 2 lands. This is such a good ability for us because it actually gives us the actual ability to like do things on our turn, and then also untap our lands to be able to like counter spells on their turn. It's just so, it's so good. It's so useful to us. It's very, very good for us. -3 here, put target non-land permanent onto its owner's library, 3rd from the top. This is basically a removal spell for 3 turns, and that's going to be enough time normally to be able to kind of win the match here. So it's non-land permanent, so that's anything but land. So if they have a big creature on their side of the field that may kill you this coming turn, just -3 with Teferi, and that creature is bye-bye. It also, takes Teferi down to 1, so we want to be careful about that. So, it can get shocked or it can get lightning strike, but I do think -3 here is actually quite good. And -8, you get an emblem whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent and opponent controls. That's not even non-land permanent, that's just a permanent. So if they just have lands on the battlefield and you're playing up against another control deck, just start exiling lands and then you just start winning. It's ridiculous. And it's not even like you're not even doing anything, you're just drawing cards. So even in a control deck, you're probably drawing multiple cards in a turn. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria is ridiculous. This card is amazing, and it's a much needed include in the blue-white control archetype. So let's go on to the other cards here, which are the Nopes. That's what I called them. We have 2 Essence Scatter. Because there is kind of a lot of creature-based strategies right now in the format, Essence Scatter is perfect for this particular deck list here. 2 mana instant, counter target creature spell. Very simple, very straightforward. But our other card here is Disallow, a very good counter card for us. 3 mana instant, counter target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. So this actually can like counter another Teferi's like +1, which is actually very, very good. Again, the goal here is we want to be able to counter like aggro decks and creature-based decks, but cards like Disallow actually help us counter other control decks in the meta. So with Teferi and a Disallow on the battlefield, we're doing just fine. Moving on here, we have Supreme Will. So there was a card I wanted to put here besides Supreme Will, and that was going to be maybe Unwind. I did like Unwind a lot. It can untap up to 3 lands, which basically gives us a free spell. But Supreme Will really does help us dig for cards, especially because this has an Approach to the Second Sun kind of win condition here, along with Teferi too. So a 3 mana instant, choose 1, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 colorless. So in the early game, that's very good. But in the mid to late game, we probably want to do the secondary ability, which is look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now, some people may say Unwind is better in certain situations. I can agree with that. But also you have Censor, which could be another good like 2 mana card or counterspell for us as well in the meta. I think this card is probably a little bit better because it gives us some longevity in the mid to late game, whereas if they don't have a lot of mana on the battlefield, Censor's good. But if they do have a lot of mana on the battlefield, Censor is just a dead card you cycle away for 1 blue mana. So I really like Supreme Will for that actual countering ability, as well as digging for cards in the mid to late game. Moving on though to some removal, we have 2 Settle the Wreckage here, 4 mana instant, exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library for that many basic lands, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. So this is a card that kind of goes actively against Supreme Will sometimes. However, in the mid to late game where opponent's going to be swinging out for win, you want to be using Settle the Wreckage and then using the secondary ability for Supreme Will. Love Settle the Wreckage here. Think it's a great card, especially against a deck where they have Eternalized paralyzed creatures, embalmed creatures, creatures that can come back from the graveyard like a Scarab God, something like that. Stellar Wreckage is going to hopefully deal with them really well. Next up too, we have some more removal. This is 3 Fumigate. There are, again, more token-based strategies right now. There's a Saproling deck out in the format, and that goes super wide, so we want to have Fumigate in here to deal with that. 5 mana sorcery, destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way, so this is a great way for us if we're down on life to actually regain basically and go back up to 20, our starting total, and just, you know, wipe our entire board. Since we only have 2 creatures in the deck, we're not really worried about that necessarily, so if we do Fumigate, it's going to be on an empty board on our side, and, you know, killing all their creatures on their side, so very good for us. Another card that we really like in here, because it is a Approach to the Second Sun blue-white control deck here, is 1 Commit to Memory, a 4-mana instant. Put target spell or non-land permanent onto its owner's library second from the top, so basically a removal spell for a few turns. It also has memory for 6. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into their library and draws 7 new cards. So this is very good if we activate it, Approach to the Second Sun 1 time, and we need to get into another one really quickly, but we don't necessarily have any kind of card draw yet, but we do have a memory in the graveyard. We just memory here and hopefully draw into an approach with those new 7. So very good, and just very good like anti-mill tech too, so very good for that as well. Moving on to our actual removal and win cons here, we have our card draw. This isn't removal or win con, but I had to put it somewhere. So this is 4 Glimmer of Genius. You know, 4 mana instant, scry 2, then draw 2, and you get 2 energy. Very good for us. The scrying 2, very, very important. Love that card a lot. And of course, drawing 2 is nice too. Another card from Dominaria that I absolutely love is Seal Away here. This is a 2 mana enchantment with flash. When it enters the battlefield, exile target tapped creature an opponent controls until Sealed Away leaves the battlefield. So I was seeing a lot of actual deck lists with 4 of these in the deck list, and I do think that maybe 2 of is better than 4. There are some creatures in the format right now that do have vigilance, so we want to kind of keep that in mind when we use Seal Away. But I still do think that Seal Away is still a very, very good removal card for us in the format. I mean, there's a ton of great creatures that opponents going to use that we could actually, you know, seal away for just 2 mana. So that's early game removal for us, and that's fantastic. Another card for us to actually like dig through our deck is Search for Azcanta. Just like you know, Glimmer of Genius, it kind of gives you a scry-ish ability. This is a 2 mana legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Search for Azcanta. More often than not, we actually will not want to transform Search for Azcanta until like the very end of the game, because Search for Azcanta is going to be pitching stuff into our graveyard, or maybe even like helping us kind of skip lands if we have too many lands, or get into lands because we need them. Moving on to some more supreme removal here, we actually have 3 Cast Out, 4 mana instant with flash, or instant, 4 mana enchantment with flash, excuse me. When it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until Cast Out leaves the battlefield. Very simple, very easy, and cycling for 1 white mana. More often than not, we're not going to use cycling on this unless we have casted Approach to the Second Sun the first time, and we need to kind of keep drawing into cards in order to get our second approach casted. But Cast Out's just supreme removal for us, grabbing a non-land permanent. Very good to shut down another Teferi or another Planeswalker we don't like, or just a large creature our opponent is playing as well. And of course, the last 3 cards in here besides lands is Approach of the Second Sun, a 7 mana sorcery. You know it's expensive, but it's totally worth it here. If Approach of the Second Sun was cast from your hand, and you've cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun, you win the game. Awesome. Otherwise, put Approach to Second Sun onto its owner's library 7 from the top, and you gain 7 life. So I love this card because the life gain is so crucial and important for you in the mid to late game if you get to cast this on the mid to late game. Again, casting it a second time, not that difficult. And of course, if they counter it the first time, you actually still get the ability. So the only time that it actually matters for them to counter it is that second time where we actually win the game. So it has to resolve that second time for it to actually matter. Approach to Second Sun is very, very good. Love this card a lot, and I think again with Teferi, Seal Away, these new pieces that are in the blue-white control strategy, it just makes the deck so much more powerful. Let's go on to the land base here really quickly. We of course have 5 island and 6 plains with 2 Field of Ruin. 2 Field of Ruin, of course, being fairly decent for us. Tapping for colorless, you can pay 2, tap it, and sacrifice it, and you can destroy target non-basic land and opponent controls, and of course, both of us hunt for basic lands, and they come in untapped. So very good against a Flip Legion's Landing, or a flip Search for Azcanta on our opponent's side of the field. Field of Ruin is just doing nice and, you know, decent work for us. We also have Ipnu Rivulet in here, and this is because we want to be able to filter through cards as soon as we cast our first Approach to the Second Sun. So if it goes and resolves and goes 7 from the top there, we just go Ipnu Rivulet and get rid of 3 cards off the top, and that way we can hopefully get into our approach much more quickly. This is of course tap for colorless or pay 1 life and get a blue mana, or you can pay 1 and a blue and tap it, sacrifice the desert, which is basically itself. Target player puts the top 4 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, so very useful for us at being able to get an approach very quickly. And of course we just have Glacial Fortress, which is a buddy land for us, coming in untapped if we control an island or a plains, and Irrigated Farmland coming in tapped, but it's also just good at cycling, so that's why it's really in here as a complete 4 of 2. And that's the complete like full 60 there. Basically it's very similar to how blue-white control was like run in the past, but with Teferi and Seal Away in the actual main board here, it actually becomes way better because you actually draw a card with Teferi, so play 5 mana creature or play 5 mana planeswalker, draw a card, untap land, so you actually play a 3 mana planeswalker and draw a card, so I think that's pretty decent, holding up maybe an Essence Scatter or maybe a game 2 negate. So let's go over the sideboard real quick and see what we have here. Starting with, of course, Scavenger Grounds. If we're going up against a God Pharaoh's Gift strategy, we have to have some sort of exile for the graveyard. Scavenger Grounds is here for that. Add colors to our mana pool, pay 2, or sacrifice a desert. Exile all cards from all graveyards. So if we want to be doing the commit to memory, we might be boarding this out and boarding in a Scavenger Grounds instead of that particular strategy. So if you want to, kind of do that, you can. But I do think this card is still very, very good against a, reanimation tile strategy, another Scarab God style strategy, a Grixis control strategy, basically. Moving on here, we have 3 Authority of the Consuls. Again, there are a lot of mono red decks still running around here, and of course there are more decks like the Saproling deck and the Wizard deck right now that are kind of fast as well. We have Authority of the Consuls to slow them down, as well as gain us some life. A 1 mana enchantment, creatures your opponent controls enters the battlefield tapped, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. So very, very good. Especially good against the Saproling deck where they go really, really wide, where they're just making a bunch of 0/1s or 1/1s. We're just gaining a single life, they're coming in tapped, and that's just gravy for us. Next up for us, we have 3 negates. So if we're playing up against maybe a control deck or maybe a slower deck, we might be boarding out those Essence Scouters and boarding in a negate here for us. Maybe boarding out Commit to Memory as well. Just negate is a very good card for us to, counter a non-creature spell. 2 mana instant, counter target non-creature spell. Very simple, very straightforward. And of course, it does counter Planeswalkers, so very important for us if we're up against the Mirror Match. Other cards for us is Seal Away, so if we know they don't have any kind of Vigilance creature on their side of the battlefield, we just bring in 2 more Seal Away, kind of like choosing this over probably Cast Outs if they don't have any like Planeswalkers or anything like that. And then we just go ham on it. It's a very good card, very useful for us, and of course can shut down any kind of creature that's coming in tapped. Next up, we just have a 1 of Ixalan's Binding. This is really here just to kind of infuriate an opponent if they're playing like a Glorybringer or something with a complete 4-off in their deck. Rekindling Phoenix is also a fun pick if you have this for a mono red deck against them. Just a very good card to play against an opponent that's on the aggro play or maybe on the tempo play where they have a nice, like really important Planeswalker on their side of the field. We just go Ixalan's Binding and bam, they can't recast the spell. Very good for us, as well as getting them rid of the card on the battlefield. So another card that actually helps us too, if we're going up against a really fast strategy where they're doing a lot of direct damage, is Regal Caracal here. It's actually a 5 mana 3/3 cat. Other cats you get +1/+1 and have lifelink, and whenever it enters the battlefield, we create 2 1/1 cats with lifelink as well. So it actually creates a nice wide board state with lifelink, which is really good for us to be able to hopefully last long enough to play our approach to the Second Sun, to gain some more life, and of course close out the match. And that's a complete 3 up there. And the last card in here, which is actually really, really good against the Mirror Match, is the Nezahal Primal Tide, a 7 mana 7/7 legendary creature Elder Dinosaur. It can be countered, so that's very good for us. We have no maximum hand size, which is also good for us if we're using a lot of Glimmer of Geniuses or using Teferi's ability every turn. And whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, we draw a card, so that's very good as well. Discard 3 cards, exile this card, return to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So if it is targeted by something that your opponent has, like a cast out or something like that, we can just flicker it, which is really great as well. But that is the full 75, guys. Let's go to the layout here. On MTGO Traders, it's coming to about 172 tickets, which isn't too terrible for a control deck. And if you're wanting to build this nice control deck in paper, it's coming to about 243 bucks, give or take. Of course, Teferi, Torrential Gearhulk, and Disallows actually are kind of the cards that are going to be the most expensive in the deck list here. But again, if you're wanting to run that control list with Teferi in it, I do think this is a great deck list to use it in. And that is it for the deck tech, guys. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you have any suggestions for it? Please let me know down there in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I have more deck techs coming out tomorrow and next week. So thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next deck tech. Peace.